I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson on idioms and adages. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with your username as well as your password, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts, grade 6, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of idioms and adages. All right, so our chapter is idioms and adages. The subject is English language arts, grade 6. And the lessons that we are focusing on is to determine the meanings of idioms from context, and to identify meaning of idioms and adages. All right. So an idiom, right, is a phrase that means something different than what the words or phrase mean on its own. So that is an idiom, right? So it's basically sayings, and it doesn't mean anything direct. So you cannot directly translate what the phrase means, right? So you cannot directly try to determine what the meaning is of a word by directly translating what the phrase is, because an idiom is a phrase that means something different than what the words in the phrase mean on their own. For example, if we say under the weather, right? I am feeling under the weather. So the idiom under the weather, right? It doesn't directly mean anything to do with under, it doesn't mean anything to do with the weather, right? So when the idiom under the weather, it basically just means that someone is not feeling well. So if you aren't feeling well and you maybe have a fever, you maybe have the flu, or you're just not feeling well at all, then you can just say like, I am feeling under the weather, right? So under the weather, it is an idiom, right? It is a phrase that means something different than what the words in the phrase mean on its own. So the words in that phrase is under the weather, right? Which means something totally different to what it actually means, right? So a phrase is like an expression. A phrase is like an expression. So you get noun phrases, verb phrases, right? It's an expression. It's like a grammatical expression. It's like, or you can say it's a group of words, right? Within a sentence. That's a phrase. You get noun phrases, verb phrases. So it's a group of words that is standing together, right? So it's a group of words standing together and they mean something. That is what a phrase means. So once again, an idiom is a phrase that means something different than what the words in the phrase mean on their own. And there we made an example of under the weather. Under the weather doesn't mean under the weather and weather, check the weather, if it's sunny, if it's raining, if it's cloudy, if it's snowing. No, it does not mean that because that is the direct translation, right? But an idiom, right? It is, it means that someone isn't feeling well, right? So under the weather is an idiom that means that someone isn't feeling well. So even if, let's say, you are not feeling well, then you don't have to say, I am not feeling well. You can just say, I am under the weather, because then that is an idiom. So people would understand that, okay, this person is not feeling well without even saying, I'm not feeling well. So, which means that also the meaning of idioms, it cannot be found by just looking at the meaning of the word. So, if you look at the meaning of the word under the weather, you cannot just assume that that is what it means, right? You're going to have to remember and figure out the meanings by looking at how they are used. So, of course, under the weather and how it's used within a sentence, right? Then you can see that, okay, this is actually what it means, right? But it's not a direct thing. It's not a direct saying. All right, so that is idioms, right? Then we have adages. And an adage or adages, it means something different from what it says. So it means something different from what it says, right? And adages are old sayings that give advice or describe the way things are. So usually our parents, grandparents, great grandparents, they had all these sayings, right? And we call that adages. That either gives advice or describes certain things, or it used to bring about humor, right? And that actually means something different from what it says. It's also figurative expressions, and figurative is not anything that is directly or literal. An example of an adage, right? It means birds of a feather flock together. So I'm not sure if you heard already of the saying birds of a feather flock together. And if you've heard about it, what do you think it means? So birds of a feather flock together. Have you heard already of that saying, or is it the first time hearing it? All right, it means similar people stays together, yes. Or let's say people with similar behaviors, traits, characters, yes. People with the same likes, they stay together, yes. All right. Remember, so there's some of you that had that it's the first time hearing it, and some have heard it already, the saying, but birds of a feather flock together. It does not mean it's to do with birds or feathers or flocks, right? So it's nothing to do with birds. It's nothing to do with their feathers, even, right? So birds of a feather flock together. It means that people who are alike, they spend time together, right? And this can either mean in a negative way or it can be in a positive way, right? And when I say in a negative or a positive way, right? Let's say, for example, you hang out with people at school who are getting A's, who are excelling in school, they behave very well, right? They do their homework and tasks on time, they complete it. Then your teacher would then basically classify your group as, for example, um, then your teacher would say, you guys are birds of a feather flocking together because of your good characters, good behavior, good traits that you guys have, right? And the fact that you might be excelling because your other friends are. So that is a positive way. Then you also have a negative way, right? Of people with similar things, right? Similar characters even. Let's say you hang out with people who, or with kids who are, they don't do homework, they have bad manners, they talk back and back chat to the teacher, right? Then the teacher is going to classify you also, or people are also going to say that you are one of them, you are part of that group or the clique that is also, that you will also have let's say bad manners eventually, because now they are classifying you as according to the friends that you hang out with or the group that you hang out with, right? So that is what it means. Birds of a feather flock together. It means that people who are like, they spend time together, and it can be good characters or bad characters, good traits, bad traits, right? Good behaviors or bad behaviors, right? But people who are alike, they spend time together. And remember, birds of a feather flock together, it doesn't mean directly to do with birds. It's got nothing to do with birds, right? It isn't about birds at all. All right. So now we said that idioms is a phrase that means something different than what the words in the phrase mean on their own. And adages, right? It means something different from what it says. And adages are old sayings that gives advice or describe the way things are. All right, so we are going to be doing our tutorial lesson on aplusstudents.ca. But for now, let's quickly look at a few idioms, right? And its meanings. So here we have a few idioms and their meanings, right? And it says, what is the meaning of back to square one? I'm not sure if you heard this already, but if somebody tells you, let's go back to square one, what do they mean? It says, I found a huge error in my math, so I had to go back to square one to try again. So I found a huge error in my math, so I had to go back to square one and try again. So what does back to square one mean? All right. So when we say back to square one, right, then it means that we need to start again at the beginning, or we need to go back to the beginning again, right? Or it's like you say, we need to restart, right? It's like restarting, because when you restart something, you go back to the beginning, right? So well done. That is correct. Because if you are going back to square one, it means that we are going back to where we started. We are restarting. We're going back to the beginning. It's nothing to do with squares, right? All right, the next one says, what is the meaning of can't hold a candle to? Can't hold a candle to. You can also say it's to correct your mistake. Yes, so we correcting your mistake is like, but it's like starting all over, going back to square one. So what is the meaning of can't hold a candle to? It says Samir's painting is good, but it can't hold a candle to the paintings in the museum. So Samir's painting is good, but it can't hold a candle to the paintings in the museum. So we need to say what the meaning of can't hold a candle to means. All right. And if we were to say what the meaning is, because remember, it's nothing to do with holding a candle, nothing to do with a candle, right? But the meaning of that word means, or of that phrase means, that you are not as good as something else. So in this case, the sentence is Samir's painting is good, but it can't hold a candle to the painting in the museum, which means that Samir is an excellent painter, right? His paintings are good, it's great, but compared to the paintings in the museum, right, it is not as good as the ones in the museum. So yeah, it's like there's a comparison, right? Meaning he's not, compared to the ones in the museum, it is not good enough, right? It's not as good as something or the other paintings in the museum. All right, we need to say what the meaning is of grasp at straws. The meaning of grasp at straws. Is it to do with grasping? Is it to do with straws? What is the meaning of grasp at straws? The sentence is after Cassie forgot her point, she started grasping at straws, desperately hoping to win the debate somehow. Grasp at straws. All right, yes, that is also one of it, not being able to win. All right, so if we look at the word grasp at straws, right, then we can say it is struggling to succeed when chances are bad, right? So usually when you during debates or tests or assessments, right, you go blank, right? You forget what you wanted to say. Debating, you forget maybe your point, and for some reason, it's like I know this, but I just forgot it, right? So that means that grasping at the straw, right? We'd say it's to struggle to succeed when chances are bad, right? So now it's getting worse, like, and I don't remember this, I totally forgot this, right? So as hard as you try, you are just not succeeding in trying to figure out what that really means or what the answer is, for example, right? So it's struggling to succeed when chances are bad, trying too hard to win, but unfortunately it is not happening. So well done, guys. All of your answers are valid and it is correct. All right, so now we're going to look at a few adages, right? It's like meanings or sayings, right? We're going to look at a few of that. It says, what is the meaning of haste makes waste? I'm not sure if you heard that already. Haste. Somebody would say, oh, don't be hasty, like don't be too quick, all right? So haste makes waste. What does that mean? Haste makes waste. That's if you've even heard of that saying, haste. Being too hasty, being too quick, it makes waste. All right, so acting too quickly, well, what will happen? Okay, that's a good one. A good explained meaning. All right, so Shalom says that acting quick causes mistake. That's correct. Milka and Nathan says doing something quickly causes mistakes that result in time, effort, and materials. Guys, that is correct, right? Because haste makes waste. Haste is like when you are quickly doing something, right? So they say acting too quickly, it causes mistake. So haste makes waste, meaning that if you make mistakes, most likely it's like you regret, you know, I should have maybe taken my time. I should have, just focused some more instead of just rushing to hand in my things, right? So haste makes waste. Acting too quickly causes mistakes. So, yes, well done, everybody. What is the meaning of watched? A watched pot never boils. A watched pot never boils. What is the meaning of that? A watched pot never boils. Not sure if you heard of that saying already. So, a watched pot never boils. So, a watched pot never boils. All right. So, a watch pot never boils. It means that time feels way longer when you're waiting for something. It's like when you're waiting for the class to end and you're checking your time and you're like, okay, it's 15 minutes, right? So now you're constantly checking your time and you're like, oh, wow, I thought it would have been done by now, but it's only 5 minutes later, right? So time feels longer when you're waiting for something. So if you're waiting for the class to end and now you realize like the time is actually going very slow, right? That is what it means. What is the meaning of as the crow flies? So as the crow flies, the meaning as the crow flies. So as the crow flies, what is the meaning of that adages? So as the crow flies. All right. So the direct translate, not the direct, but like I mean, the meaning is that by the most direct route, right? So as the crow flies, it is to do with the route that it takes, right? That is what it means with as the crow flies. They did not mention a crow. They did not mention fly, right? Yeah, you can also say not struggling much. So well done, guys. You have an idea or meaning of what idioms and adages mean, right? So we said an idiom is a phrase that means something different than what the words in the phrase mean on their own. And we said adages also mean something different from what it says. And adages are old saying that gives advice or describe the way the things are. All right. So now we're going to aplusstudents.ca. Direct route is that when the crow flies. It's like saying direct route. When we say the most direct route, then you can also say it is like a straight line, like going in a straight line, going it like just follows that direct line or way that you need to go. So most direct route, see it as almost like in a straight line, going the direct route, the shortest route, the straightest route, right? All right, so now let's go to aplusstudents.ca, where we're going to do at least one or two activities and we're going to do our test. So we're going to the first lesson, which is to determine the meaning of idioms from context, right? And in our next lesson, we're going to do set 2. So now we're doing set 1. All right. If we look at these examples, right? It says, what is the meaning of have eyes in the back of my head? I'm not sure if your teacher already told you this, but the teacher would say, like, I have eyes in the back of my head. So what does that mean? I'm also a teacher at the school that I work at, and most times this is what I would say when I'm busy writing notes on the board. I have eyes in the back of my head. All right. And when we say, I have eyes in the back of my head, right? Yes, you can say it's like I could see things that people can't see, especially like if the learners are misbehaving or the learners are doing things, whatever things, and the teacher is either writing on the board, then she can just still look on the board and be like, I have eyes in the back of my head, so I know that you did it, Seth, for example. I know you did it, Sarah. I know you did it, Mark, for example. So it is to know everything that is going on, right? I can see the back of my head. All right, split hairs. What do you think split hairs mean? Do you think it's to do with the hair that is damaged, so now it's splitting? All right, so it says to fight. Now we're going to split hairs, right? Split hairs. The split hairs where you have bad hair. It says we agree on almost all of the plan. So why should we split hairs over this one detail? What do you think they mean? Split hairs. So split hairs, right? It doesn't mean that we have damaged hairs and our hairs is splitting or split the hair in four parts, two parts because you want to do little buns. No, right? So split hairs is to fight over tiny differences. So fight over your problems, but like tiny unnecessary things. That is what you want to fight over. All right. So now we're going to our test, right? Where we are going to determine the meaning of idioms in context. If we look at, it says, what is the meaning of rose colored glasses? All right. So here they say, what is the meaning of rose colored glasses? Rose colored glasses. It says, even when her problems are huge, Maya always sees them through rose colored glasses. So, is it a cheerful point of view or something to think about seriously? Rose colored glasses. So, what do you think that meaning is? Is it a cheerful point of view or something to think about seriously? All right. So, if we choose the correct one, we can say it is a cheerful or happy point of view, right? Because it can either mean something happy, it can mean something positive, right? You are excited, you're cheerful. So well done. Cheerful point of view is correct. Well done. What is the meaning of below the belt? Does it mean it is under the belt? What does it mean below the belt? Min felt Tom's teasing was really below the belt and she couldn't help but cry. Below the belt. What do you think that means, even based on the sentence that is given? Is it on hold or unfair and overly mean? All right. So when we say it is below the belt, right, we can say it is unfair or overly mean, right? It's like disregarding something. So yeah, and disrespecting something. It's unfair and overly mean. So well done. Second one is correct. What does it mean to jump on the bandwagon? Y'all need to jump on the bandwagon. Or it says Christopher usually doesn't follow trends, but he jumped on the bandwagon and bought those sneakers. What does it mean? To join others in a car or to do popular things? Jump in the bandwagon. Is it to join others in a car, like getting in a car, or to do popular things that others are also doing? So you want to do that too. All right. So if we choose the correct one, we can say it is to do popular things. He also wants to jump on the bandwagon and follow TikTok trends, follow TikTok dances, right? Get that brand new sneakers. So yeah, it is to do popular things. So well done. All right, we're going to the next lesson, which is to identify idioms and adages, right? So we are now going to say what the meanings of these words mean, right? And how we're going to interpret it. Let's go to our test. It says, what is the meaning of don't count your chickens before they hatch? I'm sure some of you have heard this already. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. So don't count your chickens before they hatch is a don't depend on something that isn't for sure, or don't count on just one thing or person. So either don't depend on something that isn't for sure, or don't count on one thing or person. So don't count your chickens before they hatch. What does it mean? All right. Some is saying it's option one, some is saying it's option two. All right. So it says don't depend on something that isn't for sure, or don't count on just one thing or person. Let's go to the first one. Most of you said one. It's actually a balance of one and two, right? So we're going to the first one. So the first one is correct. It says keep your nose to the ground stone. So keep your nose to the ground stone. What does that mean? Is it to work or study hard? Or people have tastes? So keep your nose to the ground stone. What does that mean? Is it work or study hard, or people have different tastes? So keep your work to the ground stone. So keep your work to the ground, to the grindstone. To work hard or study hard, or people have different tastes. All right, so if we choose the correct one, that says keep your nose to the grindstone, it means to work or study hard. It's like saying you need to keep on applying yourself, work with your perseverance, work with diligence, like you've got this. Work and study hard. So well done. Option one is correct. All right, it says, what is the meaning of a rat race? Does it mean that we have rats and we are racing them not to see who's going to be at the finish line or to take the cheese first? What does it mean? A rat race. Is it running contest between small animals or a useless ongoing struggle? A rat race. Is it a running contest between small animals or is it option two, which is a useless ongoing struggle? A rat race. All right. And if we say what the meaning of a rat race is, remember we said that it is not a direct translation. It's not to do with rats, it's not to do with a race, right? So it we can say it's a useless ongoing struggle because people remove themselves from jobs because they feel like it's a rat race. People remove themselves from things that they feel is either useless or on. It's a struggle, right? So we will go with the second option because remember we said that it is nothing to do with rats. It's nothing to do with a race specifically because it is not a direct translation. It's a figurative meaning, right? All right. What is the meaning of on someone's case? Like you're constantly on my case. Is it nagging someone or sitting on someone's shelves? Someone's case. What does that mean? Someone's case. So, what is the meaning of someone's case? Is it nagging someone or sitting on someone's shelves? Some of you saying one, some of you saying two. Which one is correct? All right, so now we're going to go to the first option, right? So if you want someone's case all the time, sometimes students will feel like the teacher's on the case all the time and they're like, sit down, Seth. Don't do that, Seth. Don't go there. You are not listening. Like it's almost like they're saying that you are nagging all the time and you're constantly on my case. You're blaming me all the time, right? You're nagging. So well done. Nagging someone is correct. Nagging is like somebody that is repeating something all the time, like, don't do this, don't do that. I told you to pick up your stuff. Like, don't leave your clothes laying on the floor. Go and do this. Like, clean the drawers. The dishes are in the sink again. That is nagging, right? All right. So that is now the end of our lesson on idioms and adages, right? Said idioms are basically figurative phrases or phrases that mean something that is not directly to what the meaning of the words are, right? And adages are also words that is figurative meaning, but it means something different than what it means, right? Nagging, I made an example now of nagging, Angel, is where it's like constantly saying or picking on one person all the time, saying the same thing over and over and over, right? It's like you either criticizing somebody for what they are doing, right? It is annoying. I won't say that your parents are criticizing you. That is not what they mean. But sometimes you'll see that your parents are nagging you. They constantly tell you to do something over and over and over. And if you don't do it, they're on your case. They are picking on you. Do this, do that. So that is nagging. All right, but that is the end of the lesson. Thank you very much, grade 6, for joining the class. And I really hope that you understood what idioms and adages means. And I hope that you're going to have a good evening further. Till next time, goodbye.